Ontario Green Party leader Mike Schreiner is reacting to the government's plan to review all Greenbelt lands for possible development. Let's go live to Queen's Park.
Greenbelt was developed with no consultation, no stakeholder input. Well, I would suggest that he look at the Auditor General's report from just 3 weeks ago that clearly stated that 13 stakeholder groups and subject matter experts took part in the creation and the development of the Greenbelt. I would suggest that he speak with somebody like Victor Doyle, who was one of the experts who played a vital role in deciding on how the Greenbelt would be constructed and all the scientific and evidence that went into ensuring that it protected prime farmland and sensitive ecological areas. The Premier has called the Greenbelt a scam. Well, he's basically calling policies brought forward by previous conservative governments a scam then, because the foundation of the Greenbelt was the Niagara Escarpment Act and the Oak Ridges Marine Conservation Act, both legislation brought forward by previous conservative governments. The Premier has stated over and over again that this land is needed to build housing. We've had the government's own Housing Affordability Task Force. We've had leading planning experts, and we've had it all confirmed 3 weeks ago by the Auditor General that this land is not needed to build the 1.5 million homes the government and the opposition parties want to build. The Premier has said that this land is a field of weeds. I would recommend that the Premier go to the Duffin Rouge Agricultural Preserve to start his tour of the land he wants to pave over. The 4,700 acres, or 60% of the land he's proposed to remove from the Greenbelt, is some of the best farmland in North America. It's not a field of weeds. It's land that not only was Greenbelt protected, but actually had conservation easements put onto it, so it would be farmed forever. For him to do this when we're facing an affordability crisis in our grocery stores and we need to be protecting our local food supplies now more than ever is just outrageous. I suggest you go to Hamilton. The field of weeds I visited in Hamilton is a beautiful tree farm that he wants to pave over. I talked to a farmer whose land is adjacent to it. It's been saying, my family's been farming there for generations. We want to continue farming here. The Premier has clearly indicated by this Greenbelt review that he wants to carve the Greenbelt up. Well, then the Premier doesn't understand how food and farming economies and local supply chains work, or how species and habitat protection works. Connectivity is key to both. Farmers need to be able to move equipment and access adjacent fields and lands. And if you carve that land up as Swiss cheese, it makes the viability of farming on that land very, very difficult, if not impossible. Species and habitat protection need connectivity. If he breaks up this land as Swiss cheese, you destroy that connectivity and you put species at additional threat. Not to mention the fact that it puts our lives and our livelihoods and our property at risk from extreme weather events and flooding. This Greenbelt land grab has nothing to do with housing. And so I say to the Premier, we are in a housing crisis. Start focusing on helping ordinary people build homes that they can afford in the communities they want to live in areas that are already approved for development and we already have servicing in place, instead of wasting time and money to help a few well-connected insiders, speculators, cash in at our expense. Because what he is proposing to do with this Greenbelt review is create a speculator's bonanza throughout the entire Greenbelt. That is wrong. The people of Ontario will not stand for it. I will not stand for it, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Do you think more Greenbelt land will be opened during this review?
Well, that's exactly what the Premier has signaled yesterday with his comments. And quite frankly, now it's clear the Premier's been signaling this for months as he's been escalating his attacks on the Greenbelt. which to me completely, as I've documented in my statement, misleads the people of Ontario. And so instead of spending his time focused on building the 1.5 million homes on land that's already approved for development, that's where we should be focusing our time and energy. He's focused on opening the Greenbelt so speculators can cash in.
Like the minister said that it's the right time, to use his words, for this review to happen, so that it's not just the 14 parcels, but the entire Greenbelt that is reviewed. Do you agree with him that it is the right time for this?
No, this is the right time to spend our time and energy and money on building 1.5 million homes on the land that's already approved for development. If the housing crisis is what's driving this, why aren't you focused on building the homes on land that's already approved for development instead of opening the Greenbelt for development? Yes, a 10-year review needs to take place for the Greenbelt. The next 10-year review is slated for 2025. But now is the time to build homes to address the housing crisis, not waste time and money opening the Greenbelt for development.
He says he will not be stopped. He said that.
Well, we've been getting a reaction to the government's plan to review all Greenbelt lands. We've been listening to Ontario Green Party leader Mike Schreiner speaking to reporters, obviously expressing his concern about how the government is handling this controversy.